Commemorations have been taking place in countries across the Indian Ocean to mark the 20th anniversary of the catastrophic tsunami that killed more than 220,000 people. A vigil was held in Banda Aceh on the island of Sumatra, close to the epicentre of the huge underwater earthquake that triggered the tsunami. The vigil followed a siren that sounded shortly before 8 a.m. local time, the exact moment of the earthquake 20 years ago. The tsunami on the 26th of December 2004 is one of the deadliest natural disasters in recorded history, killing people in more than a dozen countries. Our Southeast Asia correspondent Jonathan Head, who witnessed the devastation in 2004, sent this report.
The chilling wail of the warning sirens this morning in Banda Aceh in northern Indonesia, marking the moment when this city was almost completely wiped out by the biggest tsunami of modern times. A frightening reminder for survivors, yet also a reassurance that today they are better prepared. In Thailand, they hung photographs of those who died on the tiled memorial, which reaches the height of the wave which smashed into the beaches on that Boxing Day morning. Most of the 151 British victims died here.
I feel dismay. It's been 20 years. I came here every day. Time flies, but it passes slowly in our minds.
Few understood what was happening back then as they watched the lethal torrent of water roar in. There had been no warnings. Thailand, like Sri Lanka, was a long way from the massive earthquake which sent the wave racing across the Indian Ocean.
Over here in this building, well, at the moment...
For those of us reporting the tsunami, it was like nothing we had experienced before. Arriving on Phi Phi Island in Thailand, I watched them pull body after body, most of them tourists, still in their colourful beachwear, from under the rubble. 1,300 had died on this small island in a matter of minutes. The destruction I witnessed in Indonesia was on an almost unimaginable scale. Scenes of death and grief which remain burnt into my memory. Yet the survivors rebuilt and recovered, sometimes from communities of which only fragments remained, leaving here and there monuments to that dreadful day, and carrying the hard lessons learnt on what to do should they hear the sirens, part of a now greatly improved warning system, go off.
Our Southeast Asia correspondent Jonathan Head reporting there, and Jonathan has been following commemorations in Thailand on the 20th anniversary.
In Aceh, which is a devoutly Muslim area, they held a very big prayer session in the Grand Mosque, which survived the onslaught of the tsunami, which destroyed most of the city. The mosques tended to do quite well because they've got very thin pillars and the water went straight through them without knocking them down. It's a symbolic symbol of Acehnese identity, so that was the place to hold it. They tested the sirens, which they now have. Of course, they've got a much better warning system today than they had 20 years ago. And one of the problems 20 years ago was that, in Aceh they had this massive earthquake. Their city was badly damaged even before the wave came. Some people understood a tsunami might be coming. There were some, and I've interviewed them, who did know that they needed to get to higher ground, but many people didn't know that. And of course, on the beaches of Thailand, where I also reported down in the south near Phuket, tourists there had no expectation, the earthquake was a long way off, that this would happen. At the time, people actually walked out onto the beach when they saw the sea receding, very surprisingly, totally unaware that within minutes it would come roaring back. So, it's an awful lot of commemorations of those events. In Thailand, there's a memorial in Khao Lak, one of the worst affected areas, in the form of two walls, one of them tiled, curved like a wave, that come up to the height that the wave came in at, and that was where we saw family members of those who were lost hanging photographs. There was an official commemoration in Thailand as well, but lots of little ceremonies remembering that day 20 years ago right across the southern coast in Thailand, and of course similar memorials in Sri Lanka. Every community is doing it in their own way. There's not a lot to analyse apart from the lessons learnt in terms of being prepared. It was simply something absolutely massive that traumatised communities, but from which most of them have made remarkable recoveries.
We've been hearing from survivors of the Boxing Day tsunami. And of course, Jonathan, you were there 20 years ago too. What are your memories of that time?
Just loss and grief and death on a scale that I doubt I will ever witness again. It was very overwhelming for all of us reporting it. Interestingly, I mean, at the time, it was a shock to see just so many dead bodies. But it was, in many ways, the survivors who were much more difficult for us to deal with just because of their raw, despairing grief about just how much they had lost. And you could do little else as a reporter but just sit there and listen to them, and we couldn't help them. There's nothing we could do. It needed the most enormous aid effort to help these places recover. Sometimes we wept with them. You just couldn't help but be overwhelmed. But I do think it's a different kind of a story for a reporter than many of the conflicts we cover, where there's a lot of divisiveness, there are huge debates about right and wrong, a sense of anger that things have gone wrong or have not been fixed. There wasn't anything that could have been done really about a disaster on this scale, apart from the preparedness that is now much better than it was. And I think that, and the sense that the incredible resilience people showed, I mean, the way they were able to recover when there was almost nothing left of their families or communities, has actually been quite inspiring. And there were useful lessons learnt. The Thais learnt a lot about, for example, DNA identification of victims. It was very challenging from the first, with victims from 45 different countries. In Aceh, the worst affected area, it actually helped shock both the government and a long-standing insurgent movement into agreeing to end a long and very damaging civil war. And we saw some very innovative ways of delivering aid. So, you know, for all of the horrors that we witnessed, much good came out of it as well.
Jonathan Head speaking to me a little earlier. Well, Richard de Gottel, a survivor of the tsunami, shared his memories of that time.
First of all, just want to say my heartfelt condolences to everyone that lost someone in the tsunami. I was very fortunate and lucky. I was staying in a hotel right on the seafront of Patong Beach, which was hit by the tsunami. I mean, it destroyed the tsunami. So I was a little bit, being out Christmas Day night, and I was sleeping, and then there was a lot of banging on the door, like bang, 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 bang. And I could hear screaming and shouting. I was like, oh, I can't get out of bed. I'm just going to go to sleep. And then there was like a massive roar and a bang. And that was the tsunami smashing into the seafront and the hotel. And I was like, oh, what's that noise? I have no idea what it was. And then I thought, well, I've got to get up now, see what's happening. And there was no light, no electric. And I was like, open the door of my room that was looking over into the reception. And it was like a bomb. It was just, everything was destroyed. There was cars, there was water. There was people dead, like floating in the water. And it was just a scene of, it was just devastating. Like I thought a bomb had actually gone off when I opened the door. And I managed to get down to like the seafront, and all the Patong seafront, all the restaurants, everything was just all destroyed. And then I was walking in the water, and it was just, I just didn't know what happened. And so I said, tsunami's come. You've got to get to safe ground. You've got to get higher out. You've got to get away from the area. So I sort of made my way through all the hotel, managed to get my passport, my money, and then made my way to a safer part of the island. So, and then I sort of stayed for a few days. We helped with the clear-up operation. We went to Khao Lak, which was really badly hit, like took supplies up there and water. So I helped out for the rest of my holiday, just helping out with the clear-up operation.
And in fact, you stayed out in Thailand, didn't you, for around 6 months before coming back to the UK. Why were you so keen to do that?
I just wanted to help and put something back. And I did a little bit of teaching out there. And then I really liked the teaching side of things, so I thought I'd like to do that. And then in 2011, I actually ended up going back to be a teacher out in Thailand.
So 20 years has passed now. You must consider yourself exceptionally fortunate to have got out alive. What are your most vivid memories and thoughts about what happened?
It's just the seeing it totally destroyed. Like I just remember waking up, and it was just, and I had to, when I was walking out the hotel, there was like people like in the water just floating dead, and it was just awful. The devastation was just horrible.